One night I was riding my bike home from work, taking my usual route. I left around midnight, so it was probably around 12 p.m. The town is currently quiet and boring, with lots of woods and a few people or houses. I was close to my house, surrounded on one side by a farm field and on the other by a patch of woods. Because it was midsummer, I chose to ride my bike instead of driving. Suddenly I heard a loud, blood-curdling scream come from one side of the road, but I couldn't tell which one. I came to a complete stop by slamming on the brakes and listening. There was a child's cry for help from the left side of the woods. I walked towards the woods and called out to see who was there, and the child immediately responded, "Please help me." I started running into the woods, swiping twigs and bushes out of my path. I yelled out to the child to keep screaming so I could find him. He screamed for help every 10 seconds or so, and I'd approached in that direction, running, screaming back. But pretty soon I started to realize that no matter how far into the woods I went, the child's yells didn't seem to get any closer or louder. I screamed out, "Tell me where you are," and about 5 seconds later, the child once again screamed out for help. I stopped in my tracks. I didn't like this. I started to feel like I needed help. I turned around and started running back in the direction I had come. I ran and ran until I could see my bike on the side of the road beyond the trees. The whole way back, I still heard the child scream, but it was still at the same distance. No matter how much closer to my bike I got, his scream was following me back. I almost felt like I was being stalked. I dialed 911 to report it to the police, then hopped on my bike and flew out of there, completely scared. I wasn't going to stay there because I was exhausted from telling a few friends about the strange encounter. I was ready to move on with my life when I saw something on the news that made me sick to my stomach a week later. A man hiking with his dog discovered a 12-year-old boy's body in the woods. Strangely, there were no sign of foul play, and the location where the body was found was in the same general area where I heard the screams. While the spot of forest is really large, I am compelled to believe it's a massive coincidence. I came across an offering for a free bike while browsing the app Trash Nothing one day. It was a Black Bulls brand bike, which is a top bicycle brand. At the time, my bike was an old piece of crap that I hadn't used in years, so obviously this offering caught my eye. I contacted the lister and asked for more information, such as whether the bike was truly free and where and when I could pick it up. The lister responded quickly, saying yes, it's free and first come, first served, but to hurry, since many people were contacting him. When I asked for the location or address, he responded with coordinates, which should have been my first red flag. I asked him how I was supposed to keep track of the coordinates. I asked him if there was a nearby address he could just give me, and he said to download an app on my phone. He said no, because he kept his address to himself for privacy reasons, and because there were no notable locations nearby. So he gave me his phone number to text him, told me his name was Steve, and we agreed on a time of 6 p.m. that worked for both of us. I downloaded this GPS coordinate tracker app, and since I didn't have a driver's license, I hopped on my old bike. The coordinates took me on a 15-minute bike ride, and as I got closer and saw nothing but woods on either side of me, I began to wonder where the coordinates would take me. I was now 2 minutes away, and it appeared that I was as far as I was going to get with my old crappy bike. My fears were realized, and I had to cut through the woods to get to these coordinates. I parked my bike on the side of the road, but before heading into the woods, like a clueless madman, I texted Steve and told him I was parked on the side of a gloomy road with woods on either side, and that the app was pointing me in the direction of the woods. A minute later he responded, "Yeah, this area is sketchy, so it would probably be better if you just cut through the woods instead of looking for the trail, if you follow." I figured since I gotten this far, I might as well just see it through, even if I was finding it more and more strange. I started my way into the woods, swiping twigs and leaves out of my way as I tried to make my way through the dense forest. I wasn't suited up for this though. I did it for about 4 minutes until I noticed I was getting closer to the coordinates on my phone. But there was no clearing in the woods ahead of me. Something didn't feel right. So I texted Steve again, saying I'm almost there, but can't see the clearing in the woods. I suggested that perhaps I had the wrong coordinates. I tried calling him, but it went to a voicemail after one ring. Then he texted back, saying, I have bad service and can't talk on the phone. So I asked him where I should go, because I think I'm lost. But he didn't answer. I waited and waited, hoping he would respond. But after a few minutes, I called it quits. I began to suspect that this was all a trick from the start, and I became suspicious of my surroundings. The sun was setting, so I hurried back in the direction I came, expecting to be followed. But I didn't see anyone as I kept looking back behind me. I returned to my bike to make a frightening discovery. My old, crappy bike had been hacked up and dumped in a ditch alongside the road. My body entered a fight-or-flight mode. Then I suddenly heard the sound of a chainsaw behind me. In fear, I chose my flight response and sprinted all the way down the road. I took out my phone and of course dialed 911, desperate for them to please act fast. After about 15 minutes, a police car approached me with its lights flashing. They escorted me back to the scene of the crime and took a police report that included every detail, like the demolition of my old bike and the text conversation. I was afraid he was following me, but he hasn't done so yet, so I'm hoping I'm safe from him now. My dad, who loved biking, once told me a true scary story from when he was in his 20s and still living with my grandparents. He lived next door to this older couple in their 70s. One day, Annie, the wife of the man next door, went missing. The husband knocked on their door and asked my grandparents if they'd seen her, but sadly, it would seem that no one had. A few days later, my dad was out riding his bike with some friends, and that's when it started to rain. They kept going in the rain for a while until it got to be too much. They then decided to part ways and went back home. When my dad got home and realized his parents were gone, he started the fireplace and went to his room, which was next to the living room. Then he took a warm shower. He got out of the shower and thought he heard a noise coming from the living room. My dad threw on his clothes in the bathroom and walked out into the living room. There, in my grandpa's old rocking sofa chair, sat Annie from next door. She looked at my father and said, "It's so cold, I need to get warm." My dad ran next door to get the husband, but when the two of them returned to the living room, the sofa chair was empty. Annie was gone. The two of them searched the whole house together, calling her name, but she wasn't there. Now this much of the story was enough to creep me out when my dad told it to me, but it didn't end there. And the really scary part didn't happen until the next day, when Annie's dead body was found in the man next door's basement. Her head was apparently split open when she tripped over an old bicycle wheel lying around and hit her head on the old washing machine. He only found her because the smell became so unbearable. He smelled it from the garage. The thing is, the body was deemed to have been dead for at least 4 days. Yet my dad saw her in the living room just the day before. Dad still believes he saw Annie's ghost in my grandparents' living room that day. My dad is not the type to make up stories like this. Let's just say I didn't get much sleep that night when he first told me this story when I was 10.